service open. You don't have to worry about any prosecutions or any losing your license or anything like that.
Nevis says this, quote, reasonable person of legal standard is used in many types of law. Kentucky's General Assembly finalized a proposal to use the unspent emergency dollars for recovery efforts following severe flooding in Chatham River. So-called state aid for emergencies or safe funds have been set up in recent years to help flood recovery efforts in eastern Kentucky and Tornado conduct in West
Other contributors include the estate of Grandview IN, whose bequest serves as an enduring investment in the future of public radio and seeks to help make PR even more for high-quality journalism in the 21st century. This is a PR. This is one edition from NPR News. I'm Martinez in Los Angeles, California.
And I'm Michelle Martin in Washington, D.C. Good morning. And if you want to speak with the chief economist at Moody's Analytics about recession fears ahead of new tariffs President Trump plans to unveil by tomorrow.
First, though, voters in Wisconsin have been casting ballots in states closely watched Supreme Court election.
It is the most expensive court race in American history, with billionaire Elon Musk and other out-of-state donors spending millions to decide the next justice of the court. Here's Musk over the weekend with a last-minute pitch for the conservative candidate and for what he says are the stakes for President Trump's agenda.
They will try to stop all of the government reforms that we're doing, and we're getting done for you, the American people. So,
join us for more is Wisconsin Public Radio's Anya Van Wagtendong. Anya, so this state Supreme Court race is getting lots of national attention. I mean, why is it getting that much attention, and who are the candidates?
Yeah, so this is a contest between Susan Crawford and Brad Schimmel. It's technically a nonpartisan race, but Crawford is very clearly the liberal candidate. Schimmel is very clearly the conservative candidate. So whoever wins will determine the ideological balance of court, and that obviously really matters for state law here, of course. But this is also just a really significant election coming after President Donald Trump's win in November. So it's a bit of a test of how voters feel about his first few months in office, and that's a big reason for all of that interest and just tons of money being spent here.
Yeah, that money, where's it coming from? I mean, the numbers are similar to what we see in U.S. Senate races.
Yeah, it is just wild. The latest estimates from WisPolitics, which is a news service here, show that this race has so far cost more than $100 million. That's almost twice what our last record-setting judge race here in Wisconsin cost 2 years ago. It's coming from both political parties and from all across the country. It includes Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and George Soros, who are backing Crawford, and some celebrity names in the campaign finance reports also supporting her, and a few major conservative business people are backing Schimmel, but far and away the biggest and most significant spender has been Elon Musk supporting Schimmel. He says it's really about congressional redistricting. He says that if Schimmel loses, Democrats can gain more seats in the U.S. House. Crawford says it's about Musk's business interests. Here's Crawford at a debate with Schimmel.
Elon Musk started spending that money within days of Tesla filing a lawsuit in Wisconsin. He's trying to buy access and influence.
You know, both candidates are making those accusations about campaign influence. In Crawford's case, she's referring to a case where Tesla is challenging Wisconsin's car dealership laws. Right now, the company isn't allowed to sell cars in Wisconsin. And Musk isn't just making traditional campaign donations. He also gave out $1 million checks to registered voters here. That's really skirting the line of, not out and out paying them to vote, which is illegal.
Now, what else is at stake in this race?
Abortion law, I think, is the most significant issue. There's a case to determine whether abortion is legal. It's already being heard by this court. It's unclear whether that case will have been decided before the winner of this race takes the bench. There's also a major case involving labor law and collective bargaining rights. It's probably going before the state court. Again, the exact timing of that is unclear. And then I'll just note that the Wisconsin Supreme Court has decided a number of voting and election-related cases in the past. It came incredibly close to overturning Joe Biden's victory in the state in 2020. So there's just such electoral interest tied up in having control of the highest court
swingiest swing stand, right? I'm trying to say that 5 times fast, but Wisconsin on the radio's Anya, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For weeks now, President Trump has been touting his plan to impose a broad package of reciprocal tariffs on what he calls Liberation Day. That's tomorrow. Details of the plan are still unclear, but one thing is investors are worried. Mark Zaddy joins me now to talk more about this. He's chief economist at Moody's Analytics. Mark Zaddy, welcome back to our edition.
Good morning, Michelle.
So major trading partners like China, European countries, and Canada are tighter. What are the risks of a global trade war at this point? Are we already there?
We're there. This is a trade war in my mind. We're raising tariffs on our trading partners. They're responding with tariffs on our products. We're lobbing nasty rhetoric at them. They're doing the same to us. That's a trade war. The economic damage so far has been modest, but with these passing days, the war continues, the damage is starting to mount.
So this week, investment bank Goldman Sachs nearly doubled its odds for a recession in the U.S. up to 35%. That's up from 20%. What's your outlook on the impact of these planned tariffs and whether the U.S. could be entering recession territory?
Yeah, 35% sounds about right. I'm a bit more pessimistic. I think, that's uncomfortable. I just need the context in a kind of well-functioning economy. The recession probability should be closer to 15%. So I wouldn't take any solace in the fact that we're less than even. And I will say that with each passing day that the trade war continues, those odds of recession will continue to rise. The uncertainty it's creating is doing damage day by day. So we can still turn this around. Therefore, the odds are less than even. It's because of the policy, and we can change the policy. President Trump did that in his first term in the first trade war, so he can do it again. But I fear that going down a pretty dark path here, and going to get off pretty soon, the recession odds will continue to rise, and we will be in recession later this year.
Later this year. Okay, so that's something to think about. So where would we likely to see that first? Would it be in hiring? Would it be in spending, which are obviously related? Retirement accounts, sort of lay that out for me.
Yeah, it's already happening with spending. You can see.
Hey, Nacho Supreme.
Consumers are getting more cautious in their spending.
How are you, buddy?
Spending is off, travel is down. You can actually see it very clearly in foreign travel. Overseas, people are pretty upset by all of this, and they're boycotting American goods, and they're not traveling here. You can feel it there. You can see it in consumer confidence. You can see it in business confidence. You can see it in the stock market. So it's the consumer that's feeling the brunt of it first, and with good reason. The tariffs are a tax on the American consumers.
That's awesome. You're doing wonderful. That's awesome. That's great. I'm glad to hear it.
If they start laying off workers, we're done. We're going into recession. That hasn't happened yet. That's the good news. But I'm sure businesses are thinking about it at this point. And we'll see what happens over the next couple of days. We're going to get a lot more information on the tariffs here pretty soon. And if it looks like the tariffs are going to be broad-based and could be more persistent, then we might see more layoffs, and that could be the start of a recession.
So the Trump administration is saying that any pain caused by tariffs will be short-term. What do you say to that?
It needs to be a lot of pain, and I don't know why we need to go through it. I just don't get it. And in the long run, we're mostly focused on the short run effects of tariffs. They're bad long run. I mean, they have all kinds of problems for supply chains. We're seeing shifting of event patterns away from the United States, and it hurts long-run productivity growth. I mean, it goes to competition. One of the long-term benefits of free trade is it makes markets very competitive and forces businesses to invest and think about making their business more productive and efficient. And if you have higher tariffs, they don't do that. And that's also the evidence from the tariffs under President Trump's first term. So the impacts of tariffs and trade wars are here right in front of our face, and they're going to be with us for a long time to come.
So before I let you go as briefly as you can, the tariffs clearly a driver of consumer confidence and all these other issues that you're talking about. Is there any other factor? I'm thinking of those cuts to jobs and programs by this DOGE and Elon Musk. Is that having an effect as well? And how?
Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. I mean, it adds to the uncertainty, right? I mean, it's the haphazard nature of the cuts. I mean, focus on government efficiency, have at it. I mean, that's great. We should, every business does that every single day. Government should do the same thing. But it's the haphazard nature of all of it that I think is just creating a lot of angst and adding to the angst created by the tariffs. So, yeah, I think that's
a disaster strikes somewhere in the world, U.S. aid workers usually jump into action. But Friday's earthquake in Myanmar and Thailand come as the Trump administration was firing the remaining employees at America's lead aid agency. Here's NPR's Maceo KY.
The U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, has a regional hub in Thailand. So soon after the earthquake, Sarah Charles, who left the agency last year, reached out to her former colleagues.
I've heard from one colleague, I evacuated the earthquake, set up communications, found temporary housing for my family, and I got the risk notice. I'll try to work on the response.
The reduction in force notices went out just hours after the earthquake. Back here in Washington, officials were not only riffed, but told to go home. Charles, who used to run USAID's Humanitarian Bureau, says normally the agency would send what's called a DART team, a disaster assistance response team, as well as search and rescue teams from LA County and Fairfax, Virginia. In 2023, USAID sent more than 200 experts to help Turkey and Syria recover from an earthquake.
When I look at the pictures coming out of Thailand and Burma, it feels of a similar magnitude, and seeing the response from China, from Vietnam, from Russia, and elsewhere, and not seeing the U.S. government there is really quite jarring.
The State Department says it is sending a few experts to Myanmar, also known as Burma, and up to $2 million for some local organizations already helping people recover. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce rejects the idea that the dismantlement of USAID is hampering the U.S. response.
Certain things won't necessarily look the same, but the success in the work and our impact will still be there.
But rescue teams need to be on the ground within 4 days to save lives, says Jeremy Kanandike, the top aid official during the Obama administration. He also fears that the State Department, which is taking over what remains of USAID, won't be able to do the same things.
It's going to be very hard for state to rebuild that from scratch. And what's really just nuts about how they're doing this is they're not saying, okay, we're going to take the people who did this at aid and move them over to state. They're just clear-cutting everybody.
And not preserving the experts who have led disaster teams and saved lives in past earthquakes. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
This is NPR News.
It's 19 minutes past the hour on this Tuesday morning. You're listening Morning Edition here on WKU Public Radio. I'm your host, Michael Collins. Thanks for joining us. Coming up, a new virtual Planned Parenthood service has launched in Kentucky. We'll take a look at that in around 12 minutes during our local newscast, right after NPR's national headlines. Then after that, a group of 50 leaders from rural communities in 8 states traveled to Washington, D.C. last week to urge lawmakers to preserve federal funding that's threatened by the Trump administration. We'll take a look at that story later this hour after local and national news here on WKU Public Radio. Looking at our forecast, we've got cloudy skies today, highs in the low 60s, lows tonight in the mid-30s, chance of rain tomorrow with highs in the upper 70s. Right now it's 40 degrees in Bowling Green and Somerset, 38 in Elizabethtown, and 36 in Owensboro.
Support comes from Western Kentucky University's Gordon Ford College of Business, offering AACSB accredited undergraduate and graduate degrees in accounting. From small businesses to international companies and government agencies, all organizations require the skills of an accountant. WKU's accounting programs create a culture of student success and prepare graduates with the skills needed to reach greater heights in accounting and business. More information at wku.edu/accounting.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Drexel University, whose model of experiential education allows students to choose their own path and explore the world, enabling them to discover their perfect career. More at drexel.edu. From EBSCO, supporting open source technology and making open platforms possible for libraries of all sizes. Learn more at ebsco.com. From Progressive Insurance, Progressive is looking for dedicated and forward-thinking individuals to join their growing team. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers. And from the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people at wtgrantfdn.org.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm A. Martinez.
And I'm Michelle Martin. A powerful aging patriarch, wayward sons, a strategizing wife, a watchful outsider. It's a classic family drama, and it's the framework for Purpose, the new play now on Broadway. But it's not a period piece. It's about a Black American family deeply rooted in the Civil Rights Movement, trying to figure out what that history means to them, to us, now.
You said your daddy was some sort of reverend? Like this kind of reverend. Not like a...
Theater and television. She's something of an icon. In a family. Well, both are family dramas.
Ironically, surprise is one of the hard things to achieve these days because everything is so foreshadowed or spoiled as trigger warnings, you know. And one of the things I stumbled upon in like my kind of research into this is that the family drama is sort of the thing that we do best. We somehow perfected that form or made a real meal out of it. This notion that the family unit is sort of the base social unit in American life. We're a nation of immigrants, and so all you have is the context when you move here is the family you bring with you.
And also the most tolerance and the spread out. You might look over here, but then you go there.
Right, but you're bringing that family with you, and that's how you're so establishing identity.
Here's director for the show, Rashad again. Some of the best things for family drama is looking at people as we live. That's what theater does. And it's so well written, twists and turns and surprises that come. And you never get ahead of yourself on reading it. You never get ahead of yourself on watching it, do you? You're kind of on the edge of your seat and like what in the world? You're like, what in the world? In very broad strokes, the play recalls a chapter in the life of the civil rights leader, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and his son, Jesse Jackson Jr., who served nearly 2 decades in Congress before going to prison for misusing campaign funds. His then wife, Sandy, also went to prison because of it. Jacobs Jenkins doesn't want people to draw too close a connection to the Jacksons. He says the story is about a bigger question, what it's like to inherit power and privilege while Black.
I was interested in this common phenomenon I was seeing historically of within 2 generations a kind of reversal of fortune happening, specifically as it pertained to Black political families. There's a monologue in the play where one of the
children has technology parents were essentially traumatized by their place in history, and that ultimately that trauma is somehow possibly influencing the ways in which they're raised or prepared for life.
And my parents had met in the trenches of the movement, been hosed down, had bones broken, eyes blackened.
All right, everybody, I'm here at work. Thanks for joining in.